But Spain and England being involved in a Euros final, not crazily surprising. Jesus Navas being involved in it, slightly more surprising. Two strong nations, two strong footballing histories, one strong striker, and Harry Kane. But 20 years ago this week, and the same could not be said. Euro 2004 was one of the most ridiculous international tournaments of all time, with Greece providing one of the biggest upsets the world of football has ever seen. But how exactly did they do it? How did Greece win Euro 2004? Imagine Leicester winning the Premier League out of nowhere, okay? After almost getting relegated, the crazy, magical season that was, new heroes being found and unearthed, hidden gems like Jamie Vardy and N'Golo Kante, Riyad Mahrez. But now imagine that all of their surnames had 6 syllables in them. This is in reality what Greece winning Euro 2004 would be, but the journey and the storyline of it makes it even more incredible. A better use of 6 syllables though, subscribe to this channel, I think. Does that have 6? Press that big red button, really helps me out if you go on to enjoy this one. Now, as is the case with all things that happened 22 years ago, this storyline starts in 2002. And like all bad things that happen on this earth, it actually involves England.
It's disgusting. It's disgusting.
The state of play is that England are looking to qualify for the World Cup of 2002 and we're facing off against the Greece side that's having an extremely average campaign. Going into the final minute of this game, we're drawing, and David Beckham steps up to take a free kick that would fire England automatically through to the tournament rather than having to go through the playoffs. It's an incredible moment for us, it's a defining moment for David Beckham, but it would also turn out to be a major turning point for Greece. You see, their FA, after such a disappointing campaign, said, nah, gee, we're not happy with that one. So they employed a new manager, German Otto Rehhagel. We'll come back to him in a little bit. Now, it's probably no surprise to you at this point, given they went on to win Euro 2004, that they did in fact qualify for Euro 2004. But for the qualifying stages of the tournament that happened in 2003 and 04, they were actually in Pot C, alright? There was only one worse ranked nation that made it to the tournament, and that was Latvia, according to the FIFA World Rankings. So pound for pound, they were the second least likely team to win the entire thing. But you wouldn't have believed that from qualifying. They start off with 2 losses from 2, but would then win all of their remaining games, all 6 of them back to back. And they top a qualifying group that included Andrei Shevchenko's Ukraine at the height of his powers, and also a Spain side that featured the likes of Raul, Iker Casillas and Carlos Puyol. This was just before Spain's proper golden generation, the one that won the World Cup and the Euros, but it was still an extremely strong side nonetheless. Meanwhile, Greece's side featured only 8 players that actually played outside of the Greek league. And I'll tell you what, let's talk about the players, okay? Because you'll get a grasp, really, of the level of ability that they were working with and how impressive it was that they'd won 6 games on the bounce going into the tournament. First up, Theodoros Zagorakis. He was the captain. He'd go on to win the player of the tournament, actually, but we'll come on to that in a little bit. He was a Leicester City cult hero. He played for them in the early 2000s, mostly because he had to go in goal one time because they ran out of goalkeepers. And he was also a substitute when they won the League Cup. A substitute. He didn't actually always start for a Leicester City team that got relegated during this time. In defence, we had Nikos Dabizas, a pretty solid centre-back, really, that made over 130 appearances for Newcastle, but he is most well known for being the guy that Dennis Bergkamp spun for his amazing goal for Arsenal. Demis Nikolaidis is considered one of the best Greek forwards of all time. He played on the left during this tournament, making massive use of his extreme pace, which would be very useful for Greece on the counter-attack. He played in Greece's entire career up to this point, apart from one season at Atletico Madrid. Angelos Charisteas had one of the most international careers up to this point, compared to any of the other players in this squad. He'd won the league and cup double with Werder Bremen, played for Ajax, where he'd scored 12 in 31 and won the Dutch Cup, and then he'd also played for Feyenoord and Bayer Leverkusen. He was their number 9 for the tournament, their main striker. And one man that English fans may well know is Stelios Giannakopoulos, otherwise known as Stelios, quite literally because his surname was too long for some people to say. He was one of the stars of this squad, best known for providing Bolton with more screamers than Dogden. No, maybe screaming, actually. So whilst the likes of Michael Owen, Steven Gerrard, Zinedine Zidane, Thierry Henry, Pavel Nedved, Luis Figo and co. were running rampant across Europe, this is what Greece had to bring to the table. Now, don't get it twisted, these were players with decent amount of ability, and their performances had done more than enough for for them to qualify. But there was no star player particularly. There was no star man that was even in the conversation for a Ballon d'Or or being one of the top 50 players in the world at that moment in time. But the most important thing here was not the players, it was the manager. I spoke about Otto Rehhagel earlier. He was the man who just got the job for this tournament. And he was an experienced manager, around about 30 years at this point. He'd won the Bundesliga twice and the European Cup Winners' Cup with Werder Bremen and Kaiserslautern. He'd been really successful in the 1990s. He was brought in and realised something very important. All these dons fucking hate each other. Yeah, the culture at the time was not great amongst the squad because there was such a rivalry between all the major Greek clubs. Panathinaikos, Olympiakos, AEK Athens. Their players and fans and the entire establishments just hated the shit out of each other. So when it came to actually building a unit to some degree to actually play international football, you couldn't see any of that with Greece because there wasn't any of that. Everything was far too tribal because of their domestic clubs. Otto's main goal was to eradicate that completely and build some kind of togetherness and unity within the side. Panathinaikos and Olympiakos players were getting a little bit too stuck in with slide tackles in training. Handshakes between players were very tense when they stepped out of the shower. And that was something that Otto had to eradicate. He had to bring some sort of unity to this side if they were going to overachieve at a tournament. The stigma around this team was that they were boring. And they were, I'm not going to lie. Lots of low-scoring games, but an extremely strong defense that barely ever conceded, even through the qualifying campaign. You weren't going to out-defend Greece. These lot were going to be victorious purely by sending the opposition striker to sleep because he's not been involved in the game for 35 minutes. As I said, there were no star men. There were no Nedveds, Ruud van Nistelrooy, Zlatan Ibrahimovic's, Michael Ballack's, or Wayne Rooney's. Greece had absolutely none of that. Most letters per surname, probably up there. Expected Coppoluses per capita, right at the top of any of the teams involved. So that brought us to the actual tournament in Portugal. Not much was expected out of this Greece side, okay? Obviously, they'd put some good form together to top their group, but there was still some extremely good sides in this tournament. They'd end up in a hectic Group A with Spain, who they'd qualified with, and then Portugal and a Russia side that was another underdog. It'd be an extremely close run group. They'd start proceedings with a 2-1 win over Portugal. Now, that in itself was a crazy result, even without context. Greece beating Portugal, first game, wild. They're the second lowest ranked team in the entire tournament, and just to make it even more mental, this was their first ever international tournament win. Like, ever. If you thought these lot were an underdog for, like, no reason, they genuinely had never gone to an international tournament and won a game in the history of Greece. Greece is bare old, okay? Not even in the Zeus championships of 600 BC had they actually won a game. They'd set out the target of winning one match during this tournament, and they'd done it in the first game. But the good results wouldn't stop there. They'd made history. They'd beaten the likes of Figo, Rui Costa, and embryo Cristiano Ronaldo. But the good results wouldn't stop there, as they then drew against Spain. A surprise defeat, if anything, against Russia put them into a little bit of jeopardy. But thankfully for them, Spain and Portugal drew, which meant they went through second in the group. Now, Euro 2004 was a smaller tournament than what we get nowadays. There was only 16 teams, so if you qualified from your group, you were immediately into the quarterfinals. None of this best third place teams and slapping yourself into the round of 32 or saying, no, if you got out of your group, you were already halfway towards winning this thing. Closer to the final makes it easier to win, all right? And in the quarterfinal, they'd play France. Oh. Yeah, no, it's Kalas, guys. Wrap up the... These were the reigning champions, all right? David Trezeguet's golden goal against Italy had won France Euro 2000. They were just the best team on the planet, realistically. Their squad had the likes of Zidane, Lilian Thuram, Thierry Henry, Claude Makelele, Robert Pires. Half of them had just gone invincible with Arsenal in the Premier League. Greek fans who travelled out for the tournament were already packing their suitcase the night before. Fucking wee bonbon merchants. But unbelievably, the unthinkable would happen. Chadisteas would score with half an hour to go, and France would be unable to respond. No Zinedine Zidane magic. Thierry Henry clamped out of the game. Greece had somehow, against all odds, managed to grind out a dull, defensive 1-0 victory against the reigning champions and odds-on favourite for the tournament. Next up was a semi. And also the final four of the tournament. They would be facing up against the Czech Republic. Now, this is a very different Czech Republic to what we have now. This was the definition of a golden generation. Pavel Nedved, Milan Baros, Petr Cech, and Jan Voller. Just to name a few. This Czech squad was actually pound for pound pretty good. Probably like top 6 teams involved in the tournament. It was a team full of ballers, but what happened in the game? for fuck's sake. It was 0-0 in this one for much longer though this time. We'd even head into extra time with a score still goalless. The Czech Republic had failed to break through the stout defence, the absolute unit of a back four that was Greece's defensive line. But Euro 2004 was unique, and this game was the definition of unique. Because back then, it wasn't just a situation of extra time if things were level after 90 minutes. You know, nowadays, extra time for 30 minutes, if it's still level, still a deadlock, we go to a penalty shootout. But FIFA and UEFA felt a little bit zesty during this time frame. They were feeling a little bit fruity in the early 2000s. They started adding things to the beautiful game. First of all, called Golden Goal, and then second of all, when they kind of decided they were fed up of that, they downgraded it to something called Silver Goal. Now, a lot of people have no idea what Silver Goal even is, because there was only one of them in history, and it was scored by Greece in this game. Golden Goal, in essence, was during extra time, if you scored, you won the game immediately. Let's say it's the 20th minute of extra time, you go 1-0 up, that is it. Wrap up the game, everybody goes home. You don't carry on until the end of extra time. That was got rid of because teams were a little bit too hesitant to go forward, because if they conceded, they knew the game was immediately done. So instead, they changed the ruling to be called Silver Goal, where basically if you scored, the opponents would have till the end of that half of football to score and return favour and return serve. If they didn't, then the game would end at half time or whatever. The slight issue with the only Silver Goal in history is that it was scored in injury time of the first half of extra time. So in essence, it was just a golden goal anyway, because it didn't give the Czech Republic the chance to actually reply. The game just immediately ended anyway. And that meant an improbable, almost impossible final for the minnows that were Greece. They had somehow managed to grind their way through the knockout stages after, in fairness, a pretty impressive group stage. And in a full circle moment, they'd face Portugal, the team they beat in the first game of the entire tournament. Portugal themselves had gone on a crazy journey. They'd knocked out the Netherlands, a very strong side, and England's golden generation as well, probably the team that should have won this tournament. They were hitting form at the right time, and it would have been the perfect storyline for Portugal. But it turns out a win for Greece would have been an even more perfect storyline. It's it! A ball was floated into the area, and with the goalkeeper in no man's land, Charisteas found himself the hero for Greece again. Once more, they would suffocate the life out of their opponent's attackers and would grind themselves again to yet another defensive, kind of dull 1-0 victory to complete one of the maddest underdog stories in the history of football. Greece were officially Euro 2004 champions. Now, you'd think this moment would be like a joyous occasion amongst football fans. Everyone who's ever existed in history loves the idea of an unfancied, high-odds protagonist surprising everybody. But this was the one underdog story that nobody wanted at the time. You see, everyone was very concerned about the fact that Greece actually played such defensive and, generally speaking, kind of boring football. And it was, guys. They were winning games 1-0. If we were complaining about Gareth Southgate throughout Euro 2024, then Greece were 10 times worse. Especially in an era before Pep Guardiola terrorism, intense tiki-taka and tactical analysis. Football was probably in its most free-flowing during this time period. You had golden generations, you had players that were on a very even playing field when it came to like Ballon d'Or nominations. We had the beautiful players like Ronaldinho around, R9, Zinedine Zidane, Thierry Henry, magicians like Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Robert Pires, wonder kids like Cristiano Ronaldo and Wayne Rooney. For a team of relatively unknown footballers to just come and park the bus and just deny all these amazing, exciting, like fluid teams the chance to win the whole tournament went down quicker than you could say Giannakopoulos, probably. But did the people of Greece actually care about that? Not even slightly. To them, it was a miracle, and it truly was. These players would go down in folklore and would be legends of Greece forever. From never winning a game to winning it all. It was an incredible storyline. As I said, the aftermath was mixed, and that's being generous. People, I think, were mostly concerned that defensive football would now take over. They'd almost cracked the code, they'd found a little cheat code, and if little old Greece could just defend against everybody, then now all the big teams, all the big nations would switch and decide to just really suffocate all the life and excitement out of football in order to try and win. And I guess defensive football was definitely taken more seriously from that point onwards. If you compare the defending probably of Euro 2004 to the defending of Euro 2024, in the space of 20 years, defending has got a lot better than it was then. But you still have have had exciting teams win international tournaments since. The likes of Spain, yes, it is quite tactical, but they played lovely, beautiful football throughout the time that they were dominating. I think if anything, it probably showed that there is a balance that needs to be struck at international tournaments. I think nowadays you can't win a tournament just from parking the bus, but you also can't win a tournament just from outscoring everybody. You do have to have a balance of actual genuine ability going forward, even if you're not showing it at all times, and at having a very, very strong defense that's going to concede like 3 goals maximum. I think overall Greece's achievements really should be celebrated. I know at the time it was received badly because people were scared about what football could become. It wasn't exciting, but overall the achievement was absolutely nuts. The Euros may well be done now, but who are you expecting to be the next dark horses of international football? The next team that could maybe provide a Greece underdog story, maybe going into the World Cup of 2026? Let me know down in the comments section. Whilst you're at it, feel free to slap a like on the video and subscribe if you are new to the channel, especially if you enjoyed this video. It really does help me out. You can also follow me on social media. It is at @officialfng on Twitter and on Insta. It's been a pleasure ranting at you guys today. Have a wonderful day, enjoy yourselves, and goodbye.